Hey guys, in the last video we showed you how to update a record in your database, but we didn't really show you how to validate your information. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about, what we have here is a business number, but we can really type in anything. So if we save changes, that actually works. We saved our changes, but we don't want to save some nonsense into our business number. You only want numbers so that the correct information is recorded in the correct field. And that is where we validations come in. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to your org contacts model and I want you to type in several lines of interesting code. So validate type country presence true. What this means is that it needs your country to be the country drop down to be filled in. So if we go here, if our country drop down and it's not filled in, it will give us an error. And the same, we want to do the same thing for the region, and there are several other fields that needs validation. One being address one, city, and postal code. Now their presence must be true, so that if you don't enter an address, it will give us back an error. But to finish it off, the next validation we have is valid email regex, and this is a kind of like a definition. So regex stands for regular expressions, and it's pretty much a kind of inconceivable. Well, it's not inconceivable if people comes up with it, but it's a very hard to decipher kind of code for people not familiar with it. And what this does is it takes the email address that you submit and it checks it against this pattern. If it fails the pattern, and that pattern it being that it doesn't have an @ sign, then it will throw you an error saying that it's not a valid email address. So we want to use this pattern to match it against all the email addresses that users would submit. So we would have a validates called the function to the email, and it would need to be present. The format would be with valid email regex. And that's all you have to do to validate that your email actually have an @ sign and that it's actually in the email format. And that's as complicated as we're gonna get. The next part is we're gonna have our business number. Of course, we need to have it being present, so we're gonna put in presence true, and it's gonna have to be numbers only, which is why we set numericality to true, and the length would have to be between 10 or 15 numbers because phone numbers are usually between 10 and 15 numbers, so we'll put a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 15. And we also have a cell number, and we're just going to do the same thing, except the presence is not going to be true. It doesn't need to be there. If it is there, then it has to be numbers, and the length has to be between 10 and 15. So to show that we can allow it to be blank, we're going to have allow blank equals true. And that's it for our validations. A little bit about error messages, though. Excuse me. Right now we don't have any error messages, and we put these error messages in our in.yaml file, and you can find that in your configs locales, so that env.yaml file. And I'm just gonna copy and paste a bunch of error messages, and this will include errors that you would see in future videos. I'm just gonna put them all right now because they're not really that important to learn, but they're just kind of convenient to just have them all set out in this video, in this episode, in the beginning. So here are all our messages, and today we're only going to look at our org person, or our org contact attributes more likely. So if the attributes, if our address is blank, then it will throw us an error saying that address one can't be blank. And you really set your error messages and what you want the error messages to say here. So if the business number is too short, let's say they give us 7 numbers, then it'll come up with an error saying that the business number is too short. Minimum must be 10. Minimum is 10 digits. So it's pretty intuitive, so I'm not going to explain much here. We're going to have to go to our error messages.html.erb because right now we have validations going, but if I press save changes, for example here, then we don't get our errors showing up. And that is because we need to plug in our code, more code into this error messages.html.erb. You can see that we only have a person code so far, and that is for when the person signs up or registers, then it'll throw an error. But we haven't have any error handling or code for throwing out errors for the org contact model, which we are dealing with right now. So what I want you to do is you could copy and paste this. It's not really that important. It's much like the YAML file. What it does is it will pluralize any errors. So if you have more than one error, then it'll pluralize that, and that's really all there is to it. There's not much to explain here. You could read over the code if you're interested in the nitty-gritty details, but I'm just going to leave that there. So if we go back to our update profile and we just take out some lines of code, let's say, yeah, that looks fine. So address 1 we know must be blank, and this must be numbers because it's our business number. For us to save changes, and it'll show us that the form contains 2 errors, then that's where the pluralize comes in. If it counts more than 2 errors, then it'll basically just add an S to the end of the errors adjective. I know how to code, but my grammar's not that great, I guess. But you can see that address 1 can't be blank, and our business number must contain numbers only. And it's grabbing those messages from here. Business numbers must contain numbers only, and address 1 can't be blank. So that's why it just resets our fields to the default values that is already saved in the database. But let's change this back to a number first. Save changes, and now you can see our profile pass-through validation. Now it isn't blank. They're numbers, so it tells you that the profile is updated, and that change would be reflected in our database, which I have closed. And no, I have not closed. So yeah, the business number changed, and this is all I really wanted to go through in this video. And next video, we're still going to continue with our org contacts model, and I'm just going to describe really actually where our latitude and longitude is coming from. So look forward to that. Please rate, comment, subscribe if you think you have learned something. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next episode.